What the hell happened to my copy? How just... Wait a minute. And that was Sonic 06. Huh. Isn't that a shame? In the trash! You know, it's weird how much your own perspective changes within just 1 month. One of the reasons why I do this show is to get my opinion out of my head and out on the internet. And upon realizing that after I review certain games, I don't have to go back to them ever again. That ended up being the case for Sonic 06 and Shadow the Hedgehog. After I reviewed those games, I pretty much had no reason to go back and play them or even own them, so yeah, garbage. Sorry for the delay, I just needed to make sure I never had to play Sonic 06 ever again. But now we've reached that one Sonic game that, up to this point, I really had no idea how I was going to approach it. Until mid-November of 2016, I had just about zero experience with this game. I mean, there were certain aspects about it that I did know I liked, but I pretty much had no attachment to it whatsoever. That game I'm of course talking about is the game that came 2 years after Sonic 06, which was Sonic UnWiished. It's basically a no-brainer that Sonic 06 essentially destroyed this whole franchise, but despite being a huge flop, it sold well enough so that Sega could give this franchise another go. But if the next game also ended up being another flop, then needless to say Sonic could have easily bitten the dust indefinitely. While Sonic 06 was a terrible game and wasn't really what the franchise needed after Shadow the Hedgehog, there were a few other games released around 2005 to 2007. The most noteworthy game around that time was Sonic Rush on the Nintendo DS, which introduced a new 2D gameplay style that played nothing like the Genesis games or even the Advance trilogy on the Game Boy Advance. Sonic Rush introduced a new boost mechanic, which was an ability that instantly made Sonic pick up a huge burst of speed by just tapping the Y button. This wasn't the first Sonic game to have a boost. You may remember in Sonic Heroes' special stages, you also had a boost ability that you needed to use in order to catch up to the Chaos Emeralds. However, Sonic Rush was the first Sonic game that made the boost button a part of Sonic's natural moveset. Now just why exactly am I talking about Sonic Rush and its boost mechanic? Because it's actually pretty important to mention on the topic of Sonic UnLeashed. While development of the game was pretty hush-hush, in March of 2008 a whole bunch of screenshots for a prototype, early CGI cutscenes, and even a trailer got leaked. This showcased a lot of what this next Sonic game would have in store for fans, including a very familiar looking boost motion that Sonic seemed to be performing. Aside from the trailer, over 60 in-game screenshots got leaked that showed the new art style that was thankfully nowhere near as awful looking as Sonic 06. Oh yeah, one of the reasons why I mentioned those leaked CGI screenshots is because one of the most well-known leaked images was this one. Sweet merciful Jesus, that goddamn face. In case you're wondering, this got changed in the final game, probably because of the bombastic reaction most fans and critics had, but still, that freaking face, man. While the early leak showed a whole lot of Sonic, there was also one piece of artwork that got leaked, which showed Sonic looking way better than he did in Sonic 06, but right behind him was a very suspicious looking figure. What the hell is that thing? Some sort of werewolf Sonic? What is this game trying to do? Then the months went on and Sega confirmed that the English title for this game would be Sonic Unleashed, and we got even more gameplay footage of Sonic going super fast in these daytime stages of sorts. Then eventually we got to see more of this werewolf Sonic, and judging from the trailers, his stages don't look anywhere near as thrilling as Sonic's. Why was that though? Well, the game got released in November of 2008, and it got very mixed reviews. The most common consensus was that Sonic's levels were super fast and super fun, but the Wolfhogs, yes that's his official name, stages were slow, tedious, really dull, and oh boy, it's my favorite complaint, not Sonic. The music and graphics were praised, and while the game was seen as a step in the right direction, also helps that the game sold insanely well, over 2 million copies if I can recall. A lot of critics just found the game underwhelming, mainly on the PS3 and Xbox 360 versions. The Wii version actually got solid reviews, which is really confusing, but I'll get to that much later. The fanbase also had a mixed reaction to this game. A lot of them were extremely enthusiastic about the game, but the other half also thought the game was only half good. their reasoning being how underwhelming the Werehog's levels were in comparison to Sonic's. Right now, the most common opinion Sonic fans have on this game is Sonic's great, Werehog's dull, the game is okay. That's it. Not really good or inherently bad, just okay. And you know what? I was actually one of those fans. I wasn't religiously following the series back in 2008, but I definitely did hear a lot about Sonic UnWiished, and I even checked back up on GameChip 3000 to see if he uploaded the cutscenes, which at the time he only uploaded the first 2 cutscenes in Japanese. After I became a dedicated fan of the series in 2011, my interest with Sonic UnWiished was kind of weird, I guess, in the sense that I had very little experience with the game itself. I knew a fair bit about the story, and I even listened to a little bit of the soundtrack, but for a good 3 years, I never bothered to play the game for myself. Because of the game's mixed reception, in 2010, Sega decided to delist Sonic UnWiished, along with a few other games, to try and better the Sonic brand, mainly by getting all the mediocre rated Sonic games out of the spotlight. I did feel bad that I was probably never going to play the game, but I just moved on from it. By that point, Sonic Colors and Generations were out, so I wasn't completely Sonic'd out just yet. While Sonic UnWiished got delisted for a good 4 years, it was reported by Sonic Retro that the game would be coming to PlayStation Network in April of 2014. When I heard about that, I figured that would have been the perfect time for me to give Sonic UnWiished a chance. So I finally bought the game along with all its DLC, and after playing it, it was I really don't know what happened. I was enjoying the music, the story, and especially the graphics, but I ended up giving up on Sonic UnWiished by the time I hit the second desert level. Surprisingly enough, it wasn't the Werehog that turned the game off for me. It was a few other aspects that kept me away from it, that being the QuickTime events, the Sun and Moon medals, and at the time I was slowly growing tired of the English voice cast. I just gave up on Sonic UnWiished, so much so that I downloaded a 100% save file off GameFAQs just so I could access the rest of the daytime stages, including EGGMANLAND, but I'll get to that shit later. I played through all the daytime stages, and I just didn't care that much for UnWiished. I did like the graphics and music, but I just saw later games like Sonic Colors and Generations as the better options, mainly because they were just Sonic, and didn't have those QuickTime events or medal collecting. Yeah, the Werehog didn't bother me, just the other aspects about Sonic's levels that I just found needless and stupid. Once again, I avoided UnWiished. I mean, I played through all Sonic's levels, what else was there to do? Then of course I started Cooper's Perspective back in February, with the mindset that I was going to tackle the Sonic series in June of that same year. While I knew what I was going to say about Sonic 1 through Sonic 06, along with, for a time, Colors and Generations, but Sonic UnWiished was a complete mystery for me. I had no clue how I was going to approach this massive game. When I finally did get around to working on my 06 review, I was so sure it was going to be the end of me. That game gave me way too much to talk about. Even with the full review being out, I'm pretty sure there were about 3,000 or 4,000 things I didn't mention because that review was such a nightmare to edit. Of course, it missed my proposed November 14th deadline by a full month. Such perfect timing. Initially, I wanted to get the Colors and Generations reviews out in December, but Sonic 06 kinda fucked up my schedule. After entering the mindset that this video was no longer going to be out in November, I decided to give Sonic UnWiished a second chance. Apart from playing a few stages to get some decent footage for early reviews, I hadn't actually bothered to sit down and completely play through Sonic UnWiished in 2 years. By that point, I still hadn't legitimately beaten the game. For the past 2 years, I was playing Sonic UnWiished using that 100% save file I got off GameFAQs. As I mentioned before, I felt really bad that I wasn't giving UnWiished a fair chance. I mean, I beat Sonic 06, but I gave up on UnWiished when I was only 1/3 through the game. So when my 06 review missed its deadline, around mid-November I decided to capture footage for my UnWiished review so that I could be more prepared in the editing process. Instead of doing my original plan, which was using that GameFAQs save to cheat through everything, I decided to delete that save file and actually legitimately play through the entirety of Sonic UnWiished for the first time ever. Back then, 2 months ago, I was so sure I would end up giving the same consensus, being Sonic's levels are fun, Werehog is a bore, maybe I'd say the Sun and Moon medals were a pain, and the QuickTime events sucked ass. Apart from those two, I seriously thought my perspective wasn't going to be any different than most people who gave Sonic UnWiished an average score. However, upon completing my journey through Sonic UnWiished, I was pleasantly surprised by it. What I thought would be an alright experience ended up being one of the most phenomenal playthroughs I've ever had with the Sonic game. Like, almost as good as Sonic 3K. I was surprised. I really thought I'd only find Sonic UnWiished to be okay, and that Colors and Generations were improvements upon this game. But now, I seriously think Sonic UnWiished is way better than the latter. But just how though? Well, let's have a look. Sonic UnWiished's story starts out with an amazing CGI opening sequence. It's not the same type of CG they used in Sonic 06 where everything looked overly realistic. Here, everything has a nice, stylized, and very polished looking finish, and it fits incredibly well with Sonic the Hedgehog's world. So yeah, we know the basic gist. Eggman, who now looks regular again and not that putrid abomination we saw in Sonic 06, is back and up to no good again, until Sonic shows up aboard a spacecraft and proceeds to beat the everlasting crap out of every single one of Eggman's badniks. However, Eggman captures Sonic and it seems all the mayhem is over. But... oh fuck, it's the Emeralds, and oh shit, it's Super Sonic! And at the beginning of the story, like in Sonic 3K? Alrighty then. So Super Sonic smashes his way through the Doctor's battleships and, oh my god, just look at how amazing this all looks. God, I can't believe this game is 8 years old and it still looks this good.
Sonic! I'm sorry. Really, look, go easy on me. I'll turn over a new leaf, I swear. Just give me a chance.
Well, this is new. Showing remorse, Eggman? If you played nice, I wouldn't have to break all your toys.
もう二度と悪いことはしないって約束するから。珍しく素直じゃないか、ドクター・エッグマン。いい加減くだらない遊びはやめにしたらどうだ。
Much better. So Eggman tricks Sonic and traps him in this very powerful machine that sucks the Chaos Emeralds right out of Sonic. Not only that, but Eggman uses this machine to steal all the color and energy from the Chaos Emeralds, while also electrifying Sonic in the process. The combined energy from the Chaos Emeralds ends up causing the cannon Eggman built to fire towards Earth, breaking it into separate pieces. During this entire process, Sonic ends up changing into a werewolf-hedgehog hybrid. The fuck? After splitting the world into giant pieces, Eggman sends the now changed Sonic out into space to presumably die upon impact on Mobius Earth's surface. Fuck me, Eggman's pretty badass. However, Sonic is rescued by this green shield, but still falls a good distance to the ground. Upon getting up, he finds a small fairy-like creature. After making sure he's okay, it turns out the little guy has amnesia.
お前、自分が誰かわからないのか?
なんか上からドカーンって降ってきて、目の前真っ白になって、で、あと何にも思い出せない。
俺のせいか?
Sonic decides to help the little guy out with restoring his memory while also letting him come on his adventure with fixing the Earth. During this, Sonic watches the sun rise, to which he morphs back into his regular hedgehog form, and later on discovers when it becomes nighttime, he turns back into the werehog creature. Oh, and the werehog has stretchy arms. Alright. Oh, and during all of this, Sonic decides to give the little guy a nickname, Chip.
Chip?
とりあえず名前がないとな。ぴったりだろ?
チップ最高!
Sonic and Chip continue their journey, to which they come across Tails and a new human supporting character, Professor Pickle. Yes, his name is Professor Pickle. They also stumble across Amy, but she doesn't really have that much to do with the plot, apart from one cutscene where she doesn't recognize Sonic in his werehog form, which does kinda sadden Sonic, but wouldn't this make him happy? Like, now Amy can stop bothering him when he looks like that, right? Anyways, Sonic, Chip, and Tails learn from the Professor that Eggman split the world into pieces in order to release an ancient being known as Dark Gaia, who was sealed within the Earth's core for thousands of years. Eggman stated that he did this to obtain the power left by Dark Gaia, who at the beginning of the game just sort of evaporated into purple mist, which we later learn is because Eggman woke him up a bit too early. So Dark Gaia can't completely cause havoc on the already destroyed Earth. So Sonic and Chip embark on a worldwide journey towards the Gaia temples located on each continent. Upon reaching the first temple, they discover that if they place a Chaos Emerald inside of each temple, then it'll fully restore the Emerald's power and color. Not only that, but the continent will actually fall back in place. And that's actually the whole premise of this game. Sonic and Chip head around the world to each temple to restore each Gaia temple, making the story a world adventure. I love it! After restoring the 6th temple and Chaos Emerald, Chip ends up getting sucked into a mirror, to which he has a vision that ends up restoring his lost memory. As it turns out, Chip is actually called Light Gaia. Yup, the opposite of Dark Gaia. Chip decides to head off to deal with Dark Gaia on his own and even lets Sonic know that he doesn't have to help him with restoring the Earth anymore. However, Sonic is not going to accept that and lets Chip know that he'll still go out of his way to restore the planet, even if he doesn't have to help. So they head over to the last continent they need to restore, and upon landing on this continent, they discover that Dr. Eggman finally managed to construct his own dream landmark, EGGMANLAND. Oh boy, EGGMANLAND. After making it through the hell that is EGGMANLAND, Sonic and Chip restore the last temple and mercilessly deal with the Doctor for the last time. But even after restoring all the temples and defeating the Doctor, the being known as Dark Gaia ends up emerging and knocks the Doctor several miles away from him. So, this game was hijacked by Dark Gaia? So Sonic the Werehog and Chip get ready to fight, but Dark Gaia stares down and literally sucks the Werehog right out of Sonic, making it impossible for him to ever change back into it.
Shut up!
But before Dark Gaia can attack, Chip uses his lighter abilities to combine all the Gaia temples together to create one giant statuette to stop Dark Gaia. And it looks so goddamn ridiculous that I love it. After dealing with Dark Gaia, he ends up turning into his final form, causing Sonic to finally use the Chaos Emeralds to go super, and... Oh my god, that looks so awesome! So, Super Sonic and the Gaia Temples defeat Dark Gaia in a rather gruesome way. Seriously, he rammed right through his fucking head. And the whole world is finally restored. Then, in a pretty heartbreaking scene, Chip bids farewell to an unconscious Sonic and tosses him right out of the Earth's core to safely land back in the same windmill area Sonic landed on at the beginning of the game.
Clever.
Then Sonic gets up to find Chip's necklace and keeps it as a souvenir around his glove, which is never brought back in the future games, but I'll get to that shit later. Then Sonic takes off, with Tails flying alongside him in the tornado. Such a happy ending. Sonic Unleashed has an awesome storyline. Seriously, after coming off of Sonic 06, Unleashed is like a breath of fresh air. One of the best aspects about Unleashed is that its story is very clearly done on a much bigger scale, but it never really shifts or loses focus on the big picture. It's shooting for a larger scale but still remains relatively simple, which is pulled off extremely well. The one major turnoff for a lot of people and fans is the Werehog. I personally was never bothered by it. The name is lame and inaccurate, but the whole idea and even the design of the Werehog is actually pretty inoffensive, for me at least. I didn't mind the Werehog. The stretchy arms are a bit of an odd inclusion, but whatever, I'll accept them. What? This is the same universe where a fat doctor turns animals into robots, a fox has two tails and can use them to fly, a blue hedgehog can run super fast and roll around in a ball, yet a werewolf hedgehog can have long stretchy arms? Kindly recheck your privilege, sir. Though I do dislike the name Werehog, especially since the original meaning of werewolf was that were translated to man, therefore the original term would mean man-wolf, implying that a werewolf is both a man and a wolf. So calling the werewolf hedgehog a werehog is kind of laughable. I think Wolfhog would have been a much better namesake. Yes, Wolfhog sounds stupid, but come on, this is Sonic the Hedgehog. Also, it's kinda strange how when Sonic turns into the Wolfhog, his gloves end up ripping off. Then when he turns back into a hedgehog, his gloves just suddenly grow back. Weird. Another aspect about the story that a lot of people don't really like is, well, Chip. But I don't really understand just why though. He's the basic comedy relief character, and the bond he grows with Sonic throughout the story is actually very affectionate. I really didn't mind Chip. And I did kinda tear up at his departure near the end of the story. I think I got more choked up over Chip's final scene than I did when Shadow supposedly died in SA2. Though Chip does have the more effective farewell, seeing how he hasn't appeared in any other Sonic game apart from Unleashed. I'm glad that his presence in this game is made way more special from that fact. I love Chip. One kind of weak aspect, actually it's very minor, like so microscopic that it doesn't really affect the story in any way, is Sonic. Sonic in this game is portrayed as a more heroic and calmer type of hero. He's much less cocky and his attitude is kind of missing. Mind you, I don't think he's anywhere near as bland as he was in Shadow, or as boring as he was in Sonic 06. He's thankfully more engaging when the story calls for it, and it doesn't completely make zero sense why Sonic isn't as energetic as he was in the previous 3D games. For starters, Eggman never really managed to split the Earth into pieces, and Sonic also never morphed into this Wolfhog thing before, so maybe Sonic's just trying to deal with the whole drama of the situation, thus causing him to be more straightforward and less quirky. Plus, he's helping Chip regain his lost memory throughout the game, which helps him grow a stronger bond with Chip that also causes him to still want to help Chip with restoring the Earth, even when he's told he doesn't have to. Sonic thankfully still has that thrill for adventure, and he's a great protagonist through and through. While Sonic is a great protagonist, Dr. Eggman is probably at his best in this game when it comes to being an antagonist. I mean, he managed to split Mobius Earth into pieces, and he also built EGGMANLAND, which you may remember him mentioning far back in Adventure 1, well, when he was still being called Robotnik.
Together, we'll destroy Station Square. And on its ruins, I'll build Robotnik Land, the ultimate city, where I will rule it all!
Well, in Unleashed, he actually managed to do just that. It's probably the closest Eggman has ever come to succeeding, but it is kind of a shame that he gets pushed aside just so Dark Gaia can have the final encounter with Sonic and Chip. Though I am grateful that at least Dark Gaia is the most interesting monster of the week since Chaos. Much like Chaos, Gaia is set up all throughout the story, and we're usually given hints about Dark Gaia, usually from Professor Pickle. There are slight similarities between the way they set up Chaos and Gaia, but we never get to actually see Dark Gaia in action until the very end of the story. He's got a great design, and I was way more interested in this hellish purple monster way more than I was the Bio Lizard from SA2, and while I loved how over-the-top Metal Madness was in Heroes, he wasn't really at the same level of good. And do I really need to bother mentioning Devil Doom or Solaris? Yeah, Unleashed used the same Ghost Super to stop the big bad guy ending, but another one of my favorite aspects about Unleashed's story is that it kept the Chaos Emeralds integral to the plot. The whole story is about restoring each of the Chaos Emeralds rather than Sonic and Co. pulling them out of their asses in Heroes 06. Making the Emeralds an important aspect of the story hasn't really been done since Adventure 2, or maybe even Adventure 1. Plus it fits together that Sonic would have used them near the end of the story because he went through all the trouble of restoring each of them, so getting to use them near the end is pretty gratifying. That's actually another positive about Sonic Unleashed's story. There isn't a last story segment. Yes, this is the first ever modern Sonic game where you're just playing through the whole adventure. No unlockable last segment to get a proper conclusion to the story. You just start the game, then you work your way up to the ending. Honestly, that's just what I want. The writer for this game was a Japanese screenwriter named Kyoko Yoshimura, who's written several animes and TV shows. However, she also wrote another Sonic game apart from Unleashed. What was it? Well, she was one of the script writers for Sonic 06.
Oh, that's not a good sign.
Okay, while it may be a bit of a turnoff that an 06 writer wrote this game's story, all those positive aspects I mentioned earlier are still very present. Like I said before, it's done on a much bigger scale, but it's surprisingly simple and easy to follow. I kind of intentionally skipped a lot of the scenes in this game because I really think Unleashed is worth checking out just for its story alone. I mean, it's almost flawless. There's almost nothing glaringly wrong with this game's story. I mean, one minor continuity error is that Sonic and Chip encounter Eggman in Missouri, and apparently this is supposed to be the first ever cutscene where Sonic and Eggman meet up after the opening cutscene, which explains why Eggman is surprised to see Sonic. However, there's a tornado mission just a few levels before Missouri, where Tails is flying Sonic and Chip to Spagonia. At the end of the mission, you end up fighting one of Eggman's sky-based machines that Eggman is operating. But in Missouri, there's no mention of the tornado mission, and this is just a cutscene where Sonic and Eggman officially meet after the opening cutscene. It's a bit inconsistent, but apart from that cutscene, the rest of this game's plot doesn't have any glaring plot holes. The dialogue is well written and the pacing is just right. The tone is also pretty well done. It has the perfect balance of being lighthearted enough but still being able to take itself seriously. Another big thing are the way the cutscenes are animated, and they're thankfully way better than what the previous game offered. Aside from the pre-rendered CGI cutscenes looking rich in detail, the in-game cutscenes are also pulled off extremely well. The character movements are really well done, and the shading plus the reflective lighting is really pretty. All around, it's a well crafted and superbly pulled off story for a Sonic game. But there's one very important thing that kind of kills the cutscenes for me. You may recall that I swapped the voices from English to Japanese. That's because we're still using the 4Kids voice actors, and I'm sorry, I just never liked these guys. The reason they got hired is still infuriating, and I'm really perplexed towards the large number of fans who think all the voice actors actually did a decent job in Unleashed compared to Shadow or 06. Don't get me wrong, anything is better than this.
Elise!
But I don't know. Something just sounds incredibly off with this game's English voice cast. I mentioned before that while I like Sonic's personality in this game way more than I did in Shadow in 06, I said his attitude from SA2 and Heroes is kinda missing. Despite my reasoning for Sonic acting slightly different, Jason Griffith still isn't very good in this role. He's too calm, too dull, and oftentimes sounds really confused. Not to mention, he still doesn't talk normally, and often enunciates every word way too goddamn much. Alright, his dialect isn't anywhere near as bad as it was in 06, but he still sounds really odd. Plus there are some lines that sound so painfully forced, almost as if Jason was really straining himself when reading them. Like this line for example.
How about you give me a hand and help look for somebody who knows you, Chip?
Okay, what the fuck happened there? I mentioned before that I think Sonic's attitude was missing, but when I say attitude, I mean Ryan Drummond. Yeah! I know, I talk about this guy a lot, but Drummond to me is still the only person who had the capability to voice Sonic. Yeah, he was the "oh yeah, this is happening, Sonic." But do people just forget that Drummond also voiced Sonic in more than just Adventure 1? His acting improved in Adventure 2, and I seriously think he nailed the role in Sonic Heroes. There was no reason to get rid of him. He was the only true voice that Sonic had. Who knows, maybe if Sega held on to him and seeing how his performance kept improving with each game, then maybe he would have done a fantastic job in Sonic Unleashed. It's easy to mock Drummond based off his first performance, and it pains me to see the best Sonic voice have such a horrible first impression. But he showed so much improvement in SA2. His voice was the way Sonic should sound. An energetic, teenage, cocky, cartoon blue hedgehog. Yeah, Sonic's attitude is missing in Unleashed, but it's not like Drummond wouldn't have had the capabilities of doing Sonic's voice in this game. He knew how to make Sonic sound energetic and quirky, but there were a lot of moments in especially SA2 where he knew when to tone down Sonic's voice, and actually had him act a little more serious based off a certain circumstance. If you could stop teasing him for a second, kindly listen to the way he delivered these lines from SA2.
That egghead sure loves mechanical things, doesn't he? I'll bet he has 1 or 2 spaceships lying around here somewhere, so the plan is, we'll switch the Chaos Emeralds when the machine is stopped, right? I'm worried about Tails and Amy. I hate to ask, but could you help them? This is our last chance. I got it. Before the cannon fires, I'll slam dunk it in there!
Now, imagine that type of voice delivering these lines.
珍しく素直じゃないか、ドクター・エッグマン。いい加減くだらない遊びはやめにしたらどうだ。星のパズルとは面白くなってきたぜ。ぐるっと世界旅行でもしようじゃない。これが本当の俺さ。かっこいいだろ?
I'm not trying to say Jason Griffith is some sort of talentless hack or anything, but I do think Drummond was a lot more capable of doing Sonic's voice. Look, I think Jason Griffith, as a person, seems like a really chill dude, and it's not like I hate his Sonic voice, it's just nowhere near as engaging as the way Drummond did Sonic's voice. You wanna know what voice from Jason Griffith I do hate, though? His Wolfhog voice. I want to repeat myself, I don't hate the Wolfhog in terms of design and concept, but I fucking hate the voice Jason Griffith gave him. Now, the Japanese voice for Sonic in Unleashed, and ever since Adventure 1, is Junichi Kanemaru, but when Sonic turned into his Wolfhog form, his voice was being provided by another actor, Tamakazu Seki. Now, listen to the type of voice Seki gave the Wolfhog.
俺はソニック、ソニック・ザ・ヘッジホッグ。お前は？なるほど、夜になるとこの姿になるってことか。ま、いろいろあってね。友達を手伝うのに理由なんているのかい？
Now, that's a really nice voice. It's much deeper and a little gruffer. It's a very fitting voice for Werewolf Sonic to have. Jason Griffith, on the other hand, does not even bother to replicate it. For starters, wow, 4Kids really couldn't get another actor to voice the Wolfhog, so they just made Griffith do it? And what the hell was the direction? It's like when they brought Jason Griffith to the studio, they didn't even bother letting him replicate Seki's portrayal. Instead, they just told him, just do some sort of gruffy Sonic voice. Okay. Yeah, that's good, fuck it.
What the heck is going on? I need to find Eggman and make him fix this. And fast. Hey, let me go.
I don't like it. It sucks. Why couldn't they just get someone who could capture the same mannerisms Seki gave the Wolfhog's Japanese voice? Actually, that's probably another reason why I prefer Drummond as Sonic. Really, his and Junichi-san's Sonic voices were at the same tone of voice. They sounded consistent with each other, except the obvious Drummond speaking English and Junichi speaking Japanese. Like, why couldn't they just hire voice actors who could capture the same essence the Japanese voices had? You know, make both languages sound pretty consistent? Chip's English voice sounds like a grown man, which is just wrong.
We've got to go help that professor guy out, and fast! If he got kidnapped that long ago, he's got to be real hungry by now. And if I was that hungry, I don't know how long I would last. I'd rather be dead.
Professor Pickle is just Dan Green doing a generic old man voice.
Sonic, you must travel to each of the temples listed in the Gaia manuscripts.
Amy Pallant is kind of better as Tails, but something still feels really off about the voice.
I'm sure Eggman is feeding him. Even he's not that cruel.
Lisa Ortiz's Amy still isn't as engaging as Jennifer Duyard's Amy.
I told you, didn't I? There was no way Sonic would let something like that happen.
And Eggman, ugh. I'm sorry, I know people love him, but I just don't see the appeal in Mike Pollock's Eggman. He's so generic sounding. He doesn't have any of the threat or appeal Dean Bristol brought to the character. And look, I think Mike's a really good actor, and he even has a great voice, but it's just not for Eggman, man. Every time I hear Eggman speak, I just hear Mike Pollock, not Eggman. His voice doesn't fit, and I honestly don't think it ever will. Sorry, Mike Pollock fans, but the dead guy did a better Eggman voice.
Now I just need to harness its power. EGGMANLAND will finally come to be!
The only voice I think fits their character is Eggman's new robotic assistant, SA-55. He's also known as Sass, who would later go on to be Orbot in Sonic Colors and Lost World. The only reason Orbot's voice works well in Unleashed is because, well, he's a robot. It's not particularly difficult to screw up a robot's voice, unless it's Omega from Sonic 06. Thankfully, the simplistic way of doing Orbot's voice really benefits him because Orbot is a really funny character. He's always at Eggman's side and occasionally mocks him for his past efforts to defeat Sonic. He actually got a few laughs out of me, and I personally think he's the only English voice that sounds right in this game.
You can simply begin your plans anew. Even if all of your efforts this last time were utterly wasted, even if it was a complete and utter humiliating loss, even the most pathetic loser in all the world will have this chance to...
I mean, it's not like the English voice acting is horrendously god-awful like it was in Sonic 06, but it could have been better. It just comes off sounding so damn cheap. I mean, Sega went all out with this game. They gave it such high production value. The graphics, the music, the story, just about everything is bigger and greater. But they just couldn't be bothered with the voice cast. Thank God for the Japanese voice option. It just about saves this game's story for me. Though I do think the sound effects department for the cutscenes are kinda lacking. I mean, they're not horribly distracting, but I feel we could have gotten better sound effects for these cutscenes that don't sound like they're from a Hanna-Barbera cartoon. But I'll blame 4Kids for that. Okay, aside from that, I'm still glad that this game had a story this encapsulating for a Sonic game. It was just what the series needed after 06's horrendously stupid plot, and the fact that Unleashed was written by one of 06's writers is pretty impressive. This was probably the first Sonic game that had a truly heartwarming and encapsulating story, despite a very lackluster English dub. Still, it'd be so awesome if we got more games in the series that had a story pulled off with the ambition and skill that Sonic Unleashed did so eloquently. But enough about the story, let's talk about the gameplay! Well, just from watching the trailers, Sonic Unleashed is clearly showcasing a newer gameplay style for Sonic. In comparison with the adventure games and Heroes, Sonic Unleashed doesn't play anything like them. Well, mainly just regular Sonic. The Wolfhog I'll get to later. You may remember at the beginning of the review when I mentioned Sonic Rush, which also had a sequel, Sonic Rush Adventure. Both of these games were acting as successors to the Sonic Advance series, especially since they were developed by the same dev team, Wimps. While Sonic Rush was a 2D styled Sonic game, it didn't really try to play like the Genesis games or even like the Sonic Advance games. Both Rush games were really about rushing through the levels as fast as fucking possible with the help of a brand new boost button. Now, why am I mentioning Sonic Rush? again? Well, Sonic Rush was pretty much the basis for how regular Sonic plays in Unleashed. You'll notice a ring energy bar at the bottom left of the screen, along with a sort of speedometer showing how fast Sonic is going. Judging by its name, you fill up the ring energy bar by collecting rings. When the ring energy is full, that means you could use the boost. The boost is practically a glorified run button. It'll cause Sonic's speed to quadruple and then some. He'll get a blue force field that can be used to plow his way right through Batniks and other material. I recall Sonic using a very similar move in the opening cinematic. Neat. A lot of fans dubbed the Unleashed gameplay style to be boost to win, which is pretty accurate since most first-time players will very much be holding down the boost button for almost 95% of the time, which I find to be a really dumb way of playing this game, but I'll get more into that when I get to a certain aspect about this game. Sonic doesn't just have the boost. Whenever you reach a sharp turn in levels, you could hold down either the L or R triggers to let Sonic drift around them. Most of the time, drifting can work, but it's not completely reliable for some levels. Sonic's also got a quick step move that you can perform while going at top speed by tapping either the L or R buttons that correspond which way Sonic dashes. Of course, Sonic still has his homing attack from the previous 3D titles. However, instead of pressing the jump button twice, you jump and then you press square/X. Yeah, a sub button for the homing attack. That's so odd. I mean, I could get adjusted to it, but it did kind of throw me off for a bit when I first played this game. Though I kind of wish double tapping the jump button would still let Sonic do the homing attack, because he could also gain another ability later on, but I'll get to that later on. One last default move Sonic has is his little drop kick that he can use to knock down enemies by pressing the circle/B button twice. It's a relatively decent move that did take me a while to discover, but once I found out how to perform it, I actually started using it very frequently. As a whole, while it is very adjustable, the new Boost to Win gameplay isn't perfect. Sonic isn't as smooth to control in this game. Platforming can be pretty sporadic at points. Sonic seems to mainly control like a car most of the time. And to be honest, he actually does control just fine when boosting at a few points. Which does fit seeing how most of the levels have been laid out to be more linear, I guess? Specifically, regular Sonic's levels are just about running super fast throughout the level while keeping an eye out on specific obstacles and enemies to watch out for. Another thing that kinda hurts this gameplay is that Sonic doesn't have his spin dash. Yeah, his iconic move he's had since Sonic 2. For some reason they just got rid of it. I mean, there's the boost that could plow through enemies just fine, but it just doesn't have the same appeal as rolling in a ball and killing enemies that way. Oh well. Before I could discuss Sonic's levels, after you complete the incredibly short but pretty well done tutorial level, you're immediately thrown into this game's way of level progression. Hub Worlds. Now, before you catch an aneurysm, no, these hub worlds are nowhere near as pointlessly huge as they were in Sonic 06, and I'd even say they're much smaller than the ones that were in Adventure 1. The hub areas in Sonic Unleashed is a very love them or hate them sort of thing for Sonic fans. I'd much prefer playing through the game via the stage-to-stage method while also using a level map to go through different levels, but in the case for Sonic Unleashed, I actually really like the way this game handles hub worlds. I mean, you can mess around with the environments, and like I mentioned before, they're very small and easily navigable. And, well, they look fantastic. Sonic Unleashed was the first game in the series to use the brand new Hedgehog engine. Now, Sonic Unleashed is actually using two different game engines, the aforementioned Hedgehog engine and the Havoc engine, which was also the same engine used in Sonic 06. The Hedgehog engine is a game engine that a lot of people seem to have been misinformed about. You see, the Hedgehog engine is this game's graphical engine, while the Havoc engine was used for gameplay. So yeah, all those pretty environments along with the dynamic shadows and lighting, that's all the Hedgehog engine's doing. And don't worry, the Havoc engine is nowhere near as poorly implemented as it was in Sonic 06. There isn't as much slowdown, but there are frame rate drops, which isn't because of laziness on the game dev side, but it was more ambition. While the frame rate issues kind of kill the whole appeal the Hedgehog engine tried to show off, when the game is running at a crystal clear 60 frames a second, it looks freaking amazing. And actually go as far to say Sonic Unleashed is still the best looking modern Sonic game, with Sonic Generations on PC coming very close to topping it. Seriously though, Sonic Unleashed needs a PC release, and it's pretty criminal that it never got one to begin with. Like, really, Sonic Heroes got a PC version, but between 2004 and 2010, no new Sonic game got a PC release. What the shit? I know I'm off topic, kind of, but the hub areas really do highlight just how amazing the Hedgehog engine can and does make a Sonic game look. Clearly, with this game being a world adventure, you're gonna travel around the world with all sorts of realistic looking worlds. Sonic UnWiished thankfully nails this aspect very well in terms of visuals. The worlds are more realistic, but they're stylized in a way where they'd actually fit pretty well with the Genesis games, specifically Sonic 3 and Knuckles. If you've been paying attention to the series by this point, the first 3-ish Sonic games were a bit more cartoony, but as the games progressively went on, the levels started to look more detailed and much more richer. The adventure games tried to replicate this, and while Sonic Heroes had a colorful art style that I still wholeheartedly love, Sonic UnWiished just trumps all of them while still remaining faithful to the originals. Fuck, I went off topic again. Fuck it, this game looks great and the Hedgehog engine really nails the look of these hub worlds. They're just so distinctive and are way more appealing than the ones that Sonic 06 offered. Another thing UnWiished does better than 06 are the humans. What? Humans shouldn't be in a Sonic game even though Eggman's human ruined forever! No, these humans should not be in a Sonic game. The humans in Sonic UnWiished, however, are pretty well done. Much like the environments, they're all stylized to where they don't seem completely out of place in Sonic's world. A lot of the humans in this game actually have some pretty nice designs, and they almost look straight out of a Pixar or DreamWorks movie. In terms of art direction and just graphical greatness, Sonic UnWiished does a superb job at fixing the issues Sonic 06 brought up. That game was realistic environments done horribly wrong, but UnWiished is realistic environments done so right. If the adventure games got full HD remakes, with Ryan Drummond voicing Sonic, it'd be really freaking cool if they made the levels into Sonic UnWished's art style. It's just so gorgeous. Give this game a PC release, Sega! People have been asking for it for so long! Why must you forsake us so much? Why? Anyways, the hub areas are normally used to discover new levels, kind of like Adventure 1, and as I've stated a billion times, it handles them way better than Sonic 06. Another cool thing about these hub areas is that you don't have to use the shop to buy extra abilities for Sonic. Instead, it heads back to SA1's way of handling power-ups by having you collect them in the hub areas. Very nice, but it can be a bit confusing finding a few power-ups. Like, it took me a while to find the wall jumping shoes. I had to look it up on GameFAQs a few times, but every other power-up is usually highlighted by the hub area once you approach the power-up. Regular Sonic gets about 4 upgrades. He can get the ability to wall jump, another ability that lets him stomp, and he can even equip the Lightspeed Dash from the previous games. In this game, you could use it on any trail of rings by pressing the triangle/Y button, and it works probably the best it ever has in any 3D Sonic game. I especially like how the Lightspeed Dash is dedicated to its own button now. However, there is one upgrade that can kind of affect the gameplay, which is the Air Boost, which is one of the later power-ups you equip. To perform the Air Boost, you jump in the air and press square/X, which is the same button technique you use to perform the homing attack. Oh boy. Yeah, the air boost can really get in the way if you're trying to home into an enemy, so if you're trying to use the homing attack, make damn sure your target reticule pops up on an enemy, otherwise you're boosting in whatever direction you're facing. The air boost can be a decent move to use for killing Batniks, but seeing how it's on the same buttons that you press to perform the homing attack, just be cautious that you don't air boost off into a bottomless pit or something. Seriously wish there was an option to switch the homing attack back to its original button presses, but I'm sure the game designers must have thought this way of using the homing attack would have been a safer route, seeing how a lot of the levels have some pretty difficult design to the point where you could almost dash into a spike strip or something. Of course, before I could even discuss the game's levels, there's that other side of Sonic UnWished's gameplay style. The one side that a lot of critics and a huge number of fans hate so much. Yup, it's time to talk about the Wolfhog. So once the sun goes down, Sonic morphs into his werewolf form, and this is where the gameplay becomes drastically different when compared to regular Sonic. Okay, the most obvious differences. The Wolfhog is much slower and doesn't have the ability to boost. Plus, his levels are more designed around being platformy and not very speed focused. Another thing, his levels are all about combat. In regular Sonic's levels, you could kill a Batnik by just giving it a good hit. In the Wolfhog levels, the enemies, whether they're Batniks or Dark Gaia creatures, are all rocking health bars. So a lot of the time, you've got to beat the ever-living crap out of the enemies to progress through the levels. Yes, the much larger and supposedly tougher looking werewolf is somehow weaker than the lanky hedgehog Sonic. Huh. The Wolfhog's gameplay is underwhelming in comparison to Hedgehog Sonic's levels. I mean, they're relatively slow, they take forever to get through, and they're just not fun. Now that's what I would be saying. But fuck you, I love this game and I'm gonna embrace everything I love about it. Yes, including the Wolfhog, so let's fucking go! The Wolfhog's fighting style is all about combos. You could use regular attacks by pressing square/X, and you could use stronger attacks by pressing Y/triangle. Usually by alternating between the two buttons, you could perform all sorts of moves to attack enemies. And when you knock the enemy down, you can pick them up by pressing circle/B. While holding an enemy, you can press the regular attack button to toss it at other enemies, causing them to lose a lot of health. Or you can press the triangle button to cause the Wolfhog to spin the bastard around while being able to hit other enemies nearby by making them lose even more health, until he finally tosses the fucker at some other sad prick. I fucking love that. Also, you think the Wolfhog's ground speed is too slow? Just hold the L or R triggers and Sonic can run much faster. His running motion is a bit harder to control, but it's a relatively useful ability that I'm grateful the game devs put in. Also, man, it sure is a good thing the Wolfhog has super long stretchy arms that he can use to reach new pathways and also swing on certain set pieces. Heck, a lot of the time his stretchy arms can actually save me a few lives. Phew, it sure is a good thing Sonic Team didn't take away his stretchy arms because it looks stupid. Now that would have been stupid. Guys, I honestly have no clue what to tell you, but I think the Wolfhog is just fine. Like, no joke, I actually found myself enjoying his levels, which is apparently a very rare thing for most people to say about the bloated hedgehog. The platforming sections were a nice break of pace, and I actually liked the decent amount of exploring you could do to find more unlockables and such. Plus, and this is going to be very perplexing for me to say, but I think the Wolfhog's top speed when running is actually almost the same amount as Sonic's speed was in the adventure games. Now, my eyes, or mine, could be playing tricks on me, but I think the Wolfhog has a lot more to do in his levels. Don't get me wrong, at his worst, it's something I never want to experience again, but at his best, the werewolf is fine. I'd actually go as far to say that replaying his levels during my second attempt at playing through Sonic Unleashed really helped me become adjusted to the Wolfhog's gameplay style. I started messing around with stuff and discovered different combos that I always use. Look, call it my high tolerance for bullshit or my short attention span, but I don't mind the Wolfhog. His levels can be time consuming, but they're just a change of pace, and I don't see how that's a bad thing. Again, I'm the guy who said Sonic 1 is better than Sonic 2. Seriously, this is what caused the HD version's ratings to drop. This is the worst part of Sonic Unleashed. Are you kidding me? I'm going to say this now, but this is not the worst part of Sonic Unleashed. There seriously isn't enough here to annoy me. I mean, yeah, the Wolfhog doesn't have recovery and can take a few extra hits, but then you remember, oh wait, he has a shield. Press L1, then bam, you're safe. Just protect yourself until the enemy stops firing, then go beat the shit out of him. Yeah, the Wolfhog's levels don't have the same level of replay value as regular Sonic has. Seriously, understatement of the whole fucking millennium. But on their own, they're nowhere near as bad as so many fans and critics have made them out to be. Believe me, there are much worse aspects about Sonic Unleashed. Even then, those don't ruin the game, but do certainly hold it back from being truly great. Getting back to the hub areas, when you walk around you'll notice two different medals. These are the Sun and Moon medals. What are the Sun and Moon medals? Oh boy, here we go. The Sun and Moon medals are kind of mandatory items you collect in the hub areas, and even in the levels. Why are they mandatory? At certain parts of the game, you'll need to collect a specific amount of medals in order to unlock new levels. And this is where my problems with the medals come up. Now, this is what made me give up on Unleashed when I first played it. It wasn't the Wolfhog, it wasn't the hub areas, it was the medals. Why? Well, regular Sonic's levels are normally designed to where you could just plow through them as quickly as you can, which can actually cause you to zoom right past the Sun or Moon medal. Now, maybe there are some areas where you'll be able to find one out in the open, but most of the time, you're dashing through the stage as quickly as you can, and you're not going to collect very many medals. This can kind of handicap Sonic's levels for a lot of people. The Wolfhog doesn't completely suffer from this since its levels are much slower and make it easier to find more medals, but regular Sonic's levels aren't designed to where it makes it super easy to obtain the medals while going at supersonic speed. Not too long ago, I actually thought I was going to use this as a negative aspect about these levels, specifically for Sonic. If they designed the levels to where you're going super fast as regular Sonic, then don't put hidden areas and spots where you'd have to slow down and look for them. Come on, Sonic's gotta go fast, dude! I seriously have no idea why I was going to use that as a detriment to these levels because, well, I'm actually consider this aspect of the Sun and Moon medals to be a positive. Why? Well, I still hold that a Sonic game should perfectly balance speed, platforming, and exploration. Why am I considering the medals to be a sudden positive aspect about Unleashed's levels? Well, the answer seems pretty obvious. The Sun and Moon medals are actually encouraging players to explore the levels. You may be thinking, yeah, that's really easy for the werewolf to do because he's slow and boring, but Sonic's levels are just straight lines that Sonic plows through super fast. No, actually, Sonic's levels aren't as linear as many people mention they are. Don't get me wrong, they're incredibly straightforward and almost simple, but exploring isn't completely impossible for regular Sonic to do. There are actually a pretty okay amount of sections in the level where if you do decide to stop and look around, you'll actually come across the Sun and Moon medal pretty frequently. You see, regular Sonic's levels are all about speed with a decent amount of platforming and some pretty scarce but still very present exploration, while the Wolfhog is all about platforming and usually exploring, with speed being pretty lacking but also not completely non-existent. This is where I think Sonic Unleashed's gameplay feels uneven, not just because the Werewolf and the Hedgehog have different gameplay styles, but because they do the aforementioned Sonic formula much differently. I don't mind it, and I'm happy to see that these three elements are still alive in some shape or form, while someone like old school Nekonako manga makes it seem like the former is completely missing. Though I will admit it could be pretty tough to find the medals, so I'd advise you guys to use a feature in this game that's so freaking awesome that I'm surprised that future games abandoned it. Camera control! The camera is a very controversial topic. I haven't really mentioned it before since Sonic Heroes, so for Shadow it sucked and for 06 it's just not worth mentioning. But I honestly think Sonic Unleashed's camera system is about as criminally underlooked as the entire game. For starters, you can finally move the camera up and down! But Cooper, Sonic 06's camera could also do that. There are actually two different camera systems for this game. There's the standard camera system that you use to normally rotate around Sonic, and to use it to find more Sun and Moon medals in levels and hub areas. The second camera system is the fixed camera. This is a type of camera system that's pretty common in the Wolfhog levels, and most of the 2D sections in Sonic's levels. The camera is always in a fixed position, but it's always positioned in a way where you can see where you're going and shit. However, on numerous occasions, you can actually move the fixed camera up, down, left, and right, so that you can get a better look at your surroundings. This is the part of the camera systems in this game that I love so much, and I'm seriously surprised it gets abandoned in the later games. This camera system has so much goddamn potential, and I wish Sonic Team would bring it back. Yeah, I'm rambling, but that's one of the positive aspects I have about Sonic Unleashed's Sun and Moon medals. They encourage exploration that was present in a lot of classic Sonic games. However, there are negative aspects about the medals. Some of them can be in pretty lame locations for regular Sonic, and there's the aspect that I hate the most about the medals: the specific amount of medals you need to unlock new levels. During my original playthrough, I wasn't really interested in collecting the medals, and once I got past the ice level and saw that I needed to collect more medals, I said fuck it and decided to get that 100% save file off GameFAQs. However, during my second playthrough, I actually experimented with the levels. I ended up finding a decent amount of medals, and the game was going hunky-dory. In fact, I was doing so well that I only ran into 2 occasions where I needed to get more medals to unlock a level. The first time was a simple, you need 7 medals to unlock this level prompt. I was like, okay, I'll head back to the werewolf, find more sun medals, and bam, I'm in the next level. The second time actually highlighted my biggest gripe with the medals in general. While the first time I only needed a measly 7, the second time I needed 27. By that point, I collected over 90 friggin' medals, yet I still need 27? Why? Wouldn't 90 be enough? Plus, this prompt came up once I reached the last level. Come on, Unleashed. This is the main aspect about the medals that I actively dislike. When you finally complete all the levels in Sonic Unleashed, the mandatory amount of Sun and Moon medals you'll need are 80 Moon medals and 120 Sun medals. What the hell? Why so many more Sun medals than Moon medals? Regular Sonic and Wolfhog Sonic both have the same amount of levels. Shit, both of them go to the exact same levels! Why does the medal collecting have to be so damn picky? But hey, I did pull through for Unleashed and did get those 120 Sun medals, but I still feel like these medals could have been handled better. Like, there are 7 continents / levels you end up going through with a final level at EGGMANLAND, making 8 levels for both the Hedgehog and the Wolfhog to go through. So why couldn't they make it to where you'd only have to get 10 medals per level? You know, so you'd only have to get 70 Sun and Moon medals each to reach the end of the game? If they did that, I think it would have been beneficial for newcomers to not have to collect so many goddamn medals just to get more levels. I just think the Sun and Moon medals could have been balanced out a bit better. That's all. Like I said, I did manage to pull through and beat Sonic Unleashed, but I was still bugged by the sudden medal quota the game required me to get just to reach the ending. Okay, apart from the medals being a bit obnoxious, how are the actual levels? Well, there are 9 levels as a whole in this game, and we end up traveling to 8 of them on several different continents. In case you're wondering, no, none of these locations actually exist. I had to look them up just to make sure because I'm a clueless idiot. In order, we end up going to 8 different locations: Apatos, Missouri, Spagonia, Chunin, Alaska, Shamar, Empire City, and Adabit. Of course, all 8 of these locations leads us to our final destination, the hellish EGGMANLAND. But starting with Apatow / Windmill Isle, we get to go through 2 acts. The first act is a simple tutorial level that only regular Sonic gets to play through. This is also the first ever bit of gameplay you get to do in the game, and it's a great introduction to Sonic's new gameplay style. Since it's a tutorial, you're mainly just traveling down a narrowly structured level with a few enemies in the way, while also showcasing Sonic's new Quick Step move. Act 2 of Windmill Isle is where the actual game begins. This level, in terms of design, aesthetics, and length, is just about perfect. While most of the time you are just traveling down a narrowly shaped hallway, you're not completely obligated to just keep boosting since there are Sun and Moon medals to collect, along with a few 1-ups to be found. You'll also notice that you could collect a shitload of rings in regular Sonic's levels. You don't earn an extra life every 100 rings, but you do earn one for the first 100 rings, so life farming isn't as easy as you may think it is. One thing regular Sonic's levels likes to do is break up the narrower 3D sections with these classic style 2D platforming sections. Every level does this, and I kinda feel these moments are a bit of a cop-out because if you're a first time player then you're probably just boosting through everything, thus colliding with a wall or the occasional spike strip. Plus I've already mentioned that regular Sonic doesn't control the best when precision platforming, though in 2D it isn't as bad as it is in 3D. The 2D sections in Sonic Unleashed are alright, though I do wish it would keep it more 3D, especially since you have a better perspective on what you're seeing coming ahead of you. Thankfully, the Wolfhog's levels are always about 3D platforming, and he also has a very smooth run through Apatow. The Hedgehog engine just grants wonders. Just look at how great this level looks at nighttime. One thing you may notice whenever you defeat an enemy, you'll collect a few yellow crystals. These are actually experience crystals, and at the end of levels you could either add them to regular Sonic or Werewolf Sonic. You could see this as either a clever or completely pointless inclusion to the game. I honestly don't mind leveling up the characters, though increasing Sonic's speed can sort of make him a little more difficult to control sometimes. And I find it kind of a hassle to level up the Wolfhog seeing how much stats he's got. Like, jeez. Anyways, Windmill Isle is still a really well done introduction level for regular Sonic and the Wolfhog, though it doesn't mean there aren't flaws to highlight. I'm mainly talking about the one element in Sonic Unleashed that I actually won't defend that much. The QuickTime events. Why does this game have QuickTime events? They plague every level, starting with Windmill Isle Act 2. The more you get through the game, the more shortcuts and sometimes mandatory pathways will have a QuickTime event. I hate QuickTime events so much. I've never been good at them and they always seem to throw me off. Especially in Sonic Unleashed's levels where regular Sonic is going super fast plowing through everything, but then you hit this yellow ramp or bounce off this blue spring. Then all of a sudden, press this specific button in time. Press these specific buttons before time runs out, otherwise you're probably dying. Those type of QuickTime events that require you to get them right just to avoid death are the absolute worst. It's so unfair. Unless you have good thinking strategies and can react fast enough, they aren't going to be a real issue. No, let me rephrase that. If you're the type of person who hates having pressure put on them to perform a specific task in a few seconds, you're gonna hate the QuickTime events so much. But to be honest, after a few levels, I actually did get used to the QuickTime events. Now look, I still hate the QuickTime events, and I hate how they're in every level, but they're just a product of their time. 2008 was just this weird phase where some of the most well-known video game franchises had a game that had QuickTime events in them. The QuickTime events in Sonic Unleashed are the only thing that really ages this game. There's no reason for them to be there, but if I'm able to get used to them, then they become less of an issue to deal with, though they still suck. The QuickTime events are usually just used in a few parts of regular Sonic's levels, you know, with the yellow dash pads and blue springs, while in the Wolfhog's levels they're almost completely optional, unless you want to perform a finishing combo on an enemy, thus earning more experience points. I can at least get past the QuickTime events, and they clearly didn't ruin these levels for me since I still managed to play through most of the game smoothly, despite one level. Whenever I go back to regular Sonic's levels for a good thrill, or go back to the Wolfhog's levels to earn more XP, I find the QuickTime events to be less of an issue. I still dislike them, but the QuickTime events don't ruin the levels for me. However, I do think they destroyed what could have been a fun idea if they had went to a simpler approach for this game. I'm not talking about the regular Sonic or the Wolfhog's levels. I'm talking about the 2 levels in this game, with the first one being right after you complete Apatow. If you've played this game, then you know exactly what I'm about to bitch about. After Apatow's nighttime, Tails hitches Sonic and Chip a ride on the tornado, which lets you enter these Sky Chase-esque missions like the ones from Adventure 1. except almost nothing like them. In Adventure 1, you had the ability to control the tornado to aim and shoot at several enemies being sent by Eggman. In Sonic Unleashed, it uses that same idea, but executes it in a really questionable way. Instead of being able to freely control the tornado to move wherever you want it to, Unleashed's tornado sections have you perform quick time events throughout the entire level. Every time a Batnik shows up, you have to press the correct buttons in the right order to shoot at them. For the love of God, who thought this was a good idea? These levels can be pretty time consuming, and it doesn't help that the tornado can lose energy if you just spam the buttons a couple of times, though Tails does tell you could press the L and R buttons to rebuild more energy. As long as you have the patience, you should be able to get through the tornado sections just fine, but I still hate the way they made them play in this game. I would have loved it if they redid the tornado gameplay from SA1. You know, being able to move the cursor around to kill a whole bunch of enemies, that would have been so much fun. Not this DVD minigame bullshit. Thankfully, these type of levels are pretty short and are relatively easy once you get used to the hang of things. Another thing, you know how many tornado sections there are? 2. Yep, just 2. One after Apatow and one before EGGMANLAND. And the second one is noticeably harder than the first one. I'd still say if you can make it through the first tornado section smoothly enough, then you should be able to get past the second one. As a whole, the tornado sections showcase the worst ways of using QuickTime events in this game, but thankfully there's only 2 of them and they're relatively short. Still, I wish they replicated the SA1 tornado sections, especially since this game is really trying to replicate Adventure 1 in a lot of ways. Oh well, at least the music in these levels kick ass. I love Sonic Unleashed's soundtrack! This is what I'm fucking talking about! The sound director for this game is once again Tomoya Otani. This is his second go around with Sonic 06 being the first time he was in charge of the soundtrack. While I found Sonic 06's soundtrack to be probably the most polished part of that game, it didn't completely feel like it was meant for a Sonic game. Though that mostly could have been because of the game's poor art direction, with it trying to take place in several overly realistic landscapes. For Sonic Unleashed, the game goes for that same direction, but thankfully, with the levels and areas being more stylized and to have a better Sonic vibe to them, the soundtrack is greatly improved upon. There isn't a whole lot of rock music in it, but there's still plenty of fantastic level tunes. Each musical piece is created based off its surrounding, much like Adventure 1's soundtrack did, and with Sonic Unleashed literally taking place around the entire world, we are gonna hear a whole lot of variety of genres and music. I mean, once you start playing in Windmill Isle, you freaking feel like blasting through the level at a high speed because of the music! God, the violin, the drum beats, the everything! Every daytime level is done this way. The music in Missouri, electric guitar, and African drums. So head bopping! The music in Spagonia, electric guitar, and violins! The music in Chunin? God, I don't even know half of these instruments and it still sounds amazing! Cool Edge? More like Woo Edge? What? Hey, the music in Shamar sounds pretty good too! What about Empire City? Ah, what's with the saxophone? Oh shit, this song's getting good! Oh man, the music in Adabat, it sounds so intense! seriously, every single one of Sonic's levels are filled with such fast-paced and kick-ass music. This is the type of music you should be hearing when traveling around at the speed of sound. Aside from regular Sonic having some pretty fast-paced tunes, the rest of the soundtrack is actually relatively solid. To my knowledge, this is the first ever main series Sonic game to use an actual orchestra. The Tokyo Philharmonic Orchestra was responsible for composing the opening cinematic, the results screen, and even the main orchestra theme for this game, the World Adventure. Orchestra sounding music is all around Sonic UnWished's OST, and it's so wonderful. I mean, the World Adventure theme is just exploding with energy once you boot up the game. The opening cinematic sounds way more energetic, and even completing a level feels incredibly gratifying with the live orchestra music. You see, this is how I think orchestra music should be incorporated for a Sonic game. While it does suck that the actual orchestra isn't used for a lot of tracks, still, just hearing the Philharmonic Orchestra tracks are terrific. A quick thing relating to the music is that Sonic UnWished is once again using the dreaded ranking system, and this is the first game that introduces the brand new shiny S ranks. But Cooper, Sonic 06 was the first game to have S ranks. Shut up! The ranking system is still pretty pointless. For completionist purposes, you don't really have to get an S rank to unlock everything in this game, and I'm pretty sure getting an S rank in every level just gets you an Xbox 360 achievement or a PSN trophy, which is incredibly pointless. Anyways, I mentioned that the live orchestra they got for this game did their own rendition of the results screen. The results screen is basically the World Adventure theme reprised. Listen. Sounds pretty great. However, one really funny thing is that the Philharmonic Orchestra also composed a separate track for if you earn an E rank, which is the lowest score you could get in a level. This is the music you hear for getting an E rank. Oh my god. I bursted out laughing when I first heard that. Sonic Team actually got the live orchestra to do a bad rendition of the World Adventure tune. That's hilarious. Really, that's most of the stuff that Sonic Team got the orchestra to do. The rest of the soundtrack is relatively good. The music in the hub areas, much like the other games that included them, have some very soothing tunes. They all reflect the environments they're put in and fit incredibly well. A lot of these tracks took a while for me to get used to, specifically the music in Empire City's hub areas, but all of them have really grown on me. Most of these tracks are really relaxing to listen to and are very well composed. The music in the Wolfhog's levels are... oh boy. Now, when it comes to the actual level tunes, all of them are still really great. While Hedgehog Sonic's levels have fast-paced electric guitar heavy music in them, Wolfhog Sonic's levels have more jazzy sounding themes, if you could call them that. There's a lot of techno jazz going on with the Wolfhog's levels. Some of the themes can have a pretty quick pace, while a few of the levels have a slower, more dramatic sounding theme to them, and they all sound pretty good. However, since the Wolfhog is all about platforming and combat, the freeform jazz doesn't really seem fitting to play for the Wolfhog when he's fighting enemies. So what did the sound team do? They decided to give the Wolfhog some battle music, and... oh god. Now, let's actually listen to the theme on its own. Here's what the Wolfhog's battle music sounds like. On its own, it's really full of energy, and it's a pretty decent battle theme. The problem with it, however, is how it's used in the actual game. Every time, and I mean every time you approach an enemy or a large group of enemies, the relaxing jazz music stops and the battle theme starts up. In the first level, it isn't completely noticeable, and there's even a second more intense battle theme whenever you encounter a tougher, bigger enemy. However, in the later levels, it really highlights how annoying the battle music can be. I mean, you start the level, then you encounter a group of enemies. You defeat all the enemies, you move on, then the jazzy level music starts back up. Then you encounter another group of enemies. You beat up those enemies, then you move on with the level, the jazzy music starts up, then you find another group of enemies. This happens every freaking time. You defeat the enemies, you move on. Then like 5 seconds later you encounter another group of enemies. And all of a sudden oh my god, why did they make the battle music start up so frequently? The jazzy Wolfhog music on its own sounds amazing, but almost 95% of the time you hear that fucking battle theme. God. Okay, apart from that very annoying sound design, the soundtrack for Sonic Unleashed is still really fantastic. All the level tunes fit their environments, Sonic's levels sound really fast-paced, the Wolfhog does have some very relaxing tunes that sadly get interrupted by the battle theme, but still, Unleashed's soundtrack is still really well done. Good job, Tomoya, you've outdid yourself once again. Though, one thing that I think sucks about Sonic Unleashed's soundtrack is that its digital soundtrack release is missing one very important song. Sonic Unleashed's vocal theme, Endless Possibility, is not on the digital re-release, and I have no idea why. Is it licensing issues or something? Why was that the only song that didn't make it? Everything else is there. It's so weird. Also, before you Sonic fans try to correct me, the song's official name is Endless Possibility. Not Endless Possibilities, Endless Possibility. You would be so surprised how many people keep misspelling the name like that. Another thing they get wrong is that most people, Johnny, keep saying that this song was performed by the band Bowling for Soup, which is also false. Kind of. The instrumental track for Endless Possibility was done by Tomoya Otani and his sound team. Meanwhile, Jared Riddick is the lead vocals, and Eric Chandler is providing the backing vocals. Yes, the song was performed by Bowling for Soup's singers, not the whole band. Get it right. And the song itself? I really like it. For the first non-Crush 40 associated vocal theme, it has a really gratifying feeling towards it. It's an inspiring song that really does explore the endless possibilities life can provide you. There's a lot of great lyrics to this song, and I like to think that these were more or less written into perspective of Sonic's rise back to stardom after falling from grace, especially with lyrics like, "You're losing speed, you're losing your flow, but inside me some power you'll never know. Let it out, it's inside you, better all stand back 'cause I'm coming through." Apart from the lyrics, the guitar solo is really great, and it's just a fantastic vocal theme that still remains one of the best songs to ever be in a Sonic game. It's such a shame that this song got left out of the digital release. Thankfully, the second vocal theme, My Dear Friend, is still available, and this one isn't really anything like the first vocal theme. This song was composed by Mariko Namba, with Brent Crash singing. While Endless Possibility was more Sonic's vocal theme, My Dear Friend is more Chip's vocal theme, or more a tribute to Chip's relationship and bond he built with Sonic throughout the story. So really, whether or not you like this song can mostly be adjusted to how you feel about Chip as a character. Since a lot of fans could care less about Chip, a lot of them find this vocal theme to be pretty lame. But for fans like me who actually enjoyed the story and grew an attachment to Chip, this song isn't too bad. It may not be as energetic as Endless Possibility, but it really isn't trying to be. It's pushing the sound a bit more dramatic, and again, the only way for it to truly work is if Chip left a lasting impression on you. To me, he did, and this vocal theme did hit me in the right place, especially after seeing Chip bid farewell to Sonic near the end. The song almost makes me miss Chip in a way. The piano sounds beautiful, and Brent Cratch's singing voice is usually hit and miss for a lot of people, but I thought he sounded just fine singing this song. Not bad.
Memories you can recall with me any time of day. You can reach out, you can ask me in your soul. I will answer when you call me, I will come no matter how, 'cause we are very special friends.
The soundtrack for Sonic Unleashed is fucking awesome. The main vocal theme is missing from the digital release, but I still recommend downloading the soundtrack whenever you can. Probably Tomoya Otani's best effort as a sound director. I still think Adventure 1 has the superior soundtrack, but Unleashed is probably a close second. So damn good. Pretty sure I was talking about the levels in this game, but over the course of my 3D Sonic reviews, I was kind of abandoning doing a level rundown for each of them, the reason being I started to see no real purpose of doing them, albeit for different reasons. For Sonic Heroes, all the levels were similarly structured, but I didn't really do a rundown because I personally think people should play the game for themselves to experience these levels, since my several attempts to do rundowns for Heroes' levels ended up making me scrap 2 scripts. For Shadow in 06, well, all of Shadow the Hedgehog's levels were all so boring and unappealing that I felt doing a rundown of them would have been a complete waste of time, while all the levels in 06 felt really barren and unfinished, so I felt doing a rundown of those levels in that game would have been kind of unfair. For Sonic Unleashed, I really want people to experience this game for themselves, but I don't really want to cop them out aside from one level, but I figured I should at least do a quick rundown I wish I did for Heroes. So here's the first 7 levels for Sonic Unleashed. Hopefully this won't take forever. Just look at how long this review already is. As I mentioned for episode/Windmill Idol, it's a great introduction level that looks terrific and the music is so dang good. Though Windmill Idol Daytime does have a few dickish spike placements, and of course the nighttime level has that battle theme problem, though one really nice detail is that the enemies can hurt each other, which can make them less of an issue when you're trying to fight the really huge giant Gaia creature. Missouri/Savannah Citadel is where things finally start rolling. The start of the level lets you show off Sonic's drifting mode, which doesn't really control the best, and I'm also really confused how this muddy patch can make Sonic slow down when he's boosting. Still, Savannah Citadel is a decent level with a lot of different pathways that you get to as Sonic. The Wolfhog level also goes pretty smoothly, though my first time fighting all the Batniks near the end really got my blood boiling. Though leveling up the Wolfhog in the later levels can make replaying the night levels become much easier. Spagonia/Rooftop Run. Oh man, the daytime section of this level is probably the most replayable thing in this game. Rooftop Run is widely considered to be the best level in this game for a lot of people. I mean, the drifting sections, that one shot of Sonic grinding down the clock tower, plus those numerous quick-step sections, there's something so appealing about this level that I can't quite put my finger on it. The nighttime level is alright, though it is weird how this level is still called Rooftop Run when the Warthog is mostly on the ground for this level. Huh. Chunin/Dragon Road. This level is clearly inspired by Chinese culture and stuff. There also seems to be a parade going on since Sonic gets to fly on fireworks twice. Such a weird level, though I will say it does look super nice at nighttime, but I don't understand why they use this sound effect when the Wolfhog launches himself on these poles. Again, I'll blame 4Kids for the cheap sound effects. Alaska/Cool Edge. Holy ice physics. The ground is super slippery a lot of the time. Apart from that, this level is still pretty great, and Regular Sonic gets this really neat gimmick where he's in a bobsled, though you can't boost in it and enemies can still damage you, so be careful. And like in Chunin, we get to see Sonic pull in Incredibles by running on water when boosting. Nice. Also, is anyone getting Ice Age vibes from this level? I mean, everything about this level just looks gorgeous, especially at nighttime despite the Wolfhog also having to deal with more slippery surfaces. Wait a minute, shouldn't the Wolfhog be able to stick his feet in the ground with his shoes? You know, seeing how he's wearing spiked cleats and all? Cleats? Shamar/Arid Sands. This is probably my least favorite level, and it's mainly because it's a pure desert level. I did enjoy the levels in Missouri, but the ones in Shamar are nowhere near as engaging or well designed. There's a bit too many cheap hits and obnoxious spike placements. The music is solid, though the Wolfhog section is the only level that I actively avoid. Empire City/Skyscraper Scamper. The saxophone level, ladies and gents. This level is almost like a New York City version of Rooftop Run. You're high above the sky and a lot of the grind rail sections look really spectacular. There are also the occasional drifting sections where you have to be super careful not to fall off, and the precision platforming can be a bit of a pain. The nighttime section can also be sort of brutal, and if you're an acrophobic, then this level isn't for you. Adabet/Jungle Joyride. Oh god, if there was one level in this game that seriously cemented the fact that this game needs a PC release, then it's this level. First of all, look at this. Look at how amazing the Hedgehog engine pulls this level off. But god, the Havoc engine really can't seem to handle everything on screen. I mentioned long ago that this game doesn't have any slowdown issues, but the framerate can seriously take a dip in Adabet. Seriously, this is ridiculous. Okay, if you can get past the technical issues, well, Jungle Joyride is a pretty nice pre-final level. I feel like this level is kind of a testament of all the skills you've learned from the past levels, and the difficulty challenge is ramped up super high. While there are difficulty spikes, the biggest enemy you'll face in this level is the frame rate, because holy shit. The nighttime level is thankfully not that bad. It's the usual puzzle solving and platforming level with the mook at the end to beat up. The level also runs pretty smoothly. Wish I could say that about the daytime level. For fuck's sake, where's the HD remaster at, Sega? That's pretty much all the levels. Wow, this late into the review. But there is one last level that I haven't mentioned yet. But I'm saving that for dramatic effects, so I'll talk about that shit later! The boss battles in this game are a huge step up from the ones in Sonic 06, even though the QuickTime events can kind of ruin them, but still, they're all pretty well done. Eggman gets a good 5 boss battles, while 4 Gaia monsters take the center stage, including Dark Gaia himself, and there's also a final boss battle with Eggman, but I'll get to both of them near the end. Eggman's first encounter is in the Tornado Defense mission, and all you have to do is just press the correct corresponding buttons. not the best boss fight Eggman has to offer. The Egg Beetle, Egg Devil Ray, and Egg Lancer are all similarly structured. Regular Sonic just quick steps and jumps to avoid obstacles and projectiles while using either the homing attack or the boost on Eggman whenever there's a clear shot. If you're able to beat one boss, then you should be able to beat the other ones. Just keep an eye out on those quick time events during the Egg Lancer. I'm grateful, but why is this the only Eggman boss with quick time events? The first 3 Gaia monsters are all saved for the Wolfhog himself. In Chun-In, there's the possessed Dark Gaia Phoenix, which involves the Wolfhog tossing jugs of water at the fiery Phoenix to cool him down so that you can get a few punches on him. Be sure to use your shield and also watch out for those quick time events. Those fucking quick time events. In Alaska, there's the Dark Moray, and he's actually really easy to figure out. You just freeze the dragons and beat the shit out of them. Plus, the main dragon has 3 green hit-me-zits on him, so smack him. Freeze the fucker if you have to. Then there's the Dark Guardian in Shamar, and this is probably the weakest Dark Gaia boss. You just push these blocks to the top of the level to weaken the Guardian, and you could just regularly beat the crap out of him. Nothing particularly threatening. I got more annoyed by these opening and closing gates. Be sure to use your run button when pushing blocks because that makes the Wolfhog push them much faster. That's pretty useful. The Dark Guardian is pretty lackluster when compared to the previous boss battles, though there is this cute line Sonic makes referring to Amy. Well, as you could see, the writing in this game is pretty underrated. Wait, as you can see, this game was on Nintendo Wii?
Wow! Nice segue.
Yeah, 2 days before people got the HD version of UnWiished, the Wii and PS2 got their own version of this game. This wasn't developed by Sonic Team, who made the HD version, but it was developed by Dimps of all people. Yeah, Dimps, the same team who made the Sonic Advance series along with the Rush games, which was where the boosting gameplay originated from. Sadly, because this is on insufficient hardware when compared to the 360 and PS3, this game isn't going to look that graphically pleasing, and yeah, I'm completely right. I could see why Dimps mostly stuck to making handheld games because this is really underwhelming to look at. There's a reason why this version is mostly known as UnWiished, because holy shit does it pale in comparison to the HD version. The story is the same, and it even uses the HD version's cutscenes compressed into MP4s, which becomes really glaring whenever the game switches from PS3 graphics back to the Wii graphics. Then there's the actual gameplay, which is really uninteresting. I'm pretty sure I'm supposed to be using the Wii's motion controls to get a proper experience, but fuck that, I'll stick to using the GameCube/classic controller option. Sonic's gameplay feels really watered down. He almost plays like he does in the HD version, he controls a little smoother and can use the homing attack without having to press a different button, but the gameplay is just really dull. He's still got the boost, but you can't just keep continually boosting during the whole level. Instead, the boost bar is split up into separate pieces, meaning you could only boost a few times and for a couple seconds. So normally I'm just tapping the X button over and over again to keep the boost somewhat going. Then there's the Wolfhog, who is also almost like he was in the HD version. Kind of. He's still got the regular combat stuff and his levels are still about platforming, though unlike the HD version where you'd have to go through one really huge level as the Wolfhog, the Wii version instead decides to split them up, so this means you'll have to end up playing his levels in 3 separate acts, and I can't even defend the Wolfhog in this version. He's really slippery when running, and I just don't find his combat moves as engaging as they were in the HD version. Another thing I hate about him in the Wii version is that whenever you're climbing things or just holding on to stuff, you always have to hold down the A button, unlike in the HD version where you'd only have to simply tap the circle/B button and you'll be holding on to whatever you're grabbing for as long as you want. It's so picky to do in the Wii version, and sometimes I end up losing my grip because I keep forgetting to hold down the grab button and I end up letting go to whatever I'm trying to grab onto. It's so annoying. Another annoying part of the Wii version is the way it handles level progression. The hub areas from the HD version are non-existent, but the game still has these menu-styled hub areas and they're just so cheap looking. You talk to a bunch of cardboard cutouts of the citizens, and you just keep talking to them until you receive an item. Nothing they say is interesting, and most of the time you're clicking on several new texts until you get whatever you need to enter another level. You know, there were NPCs in the HD version, but just about all of them were completely optional to talk to. The only one you usually need to talk to is Professor Pickle, who tells and gives you access to whatever level you're supposed to go to next. The Wii version, on the other hand, about as appealing as scrolling through a DVD menu. Plus, all you had to do was just collect the Sun and Moon medals in the HD version, and those are still in the Wii version, but you earned them by getting high rankings and levels. Like, all you have to do is just get an S rank in a level, and you'll end up getting 3 Sun or Moon medals. I guess this is easier, but this kills the aspect that the medals brought to the HD version. You know, exploration! Now the levels are just about running super fucking fast through Sonic and even the Wolfhog's dull level designs. Speaking of level design, this version fucking blows. There are too many flatlands and Sonic just running forward doing almost nothing. There is exploration, but there's almost zero reason to do them unless you're looking for an unlockable item in a bubble container, but none of them really help you in the slightest, so it's all completely worthless. And to make things even worse, all the levels are mission based. You have to do several missions in the same level, meaning you'll end up playing them over and over again. So yeah, regular Sonic is just playing the same levels over and over again while they're being slightly altered. And like I mentioned before, the Wolfhog has to play through the same level split in 3 acts. This isn't fun. Then there's the boss battles, and they're just watered down versions of the bosses in the HD version, and they're putting me to sleep. Though one thing the Eggman boss fights in this version did for me is make me slowly realize just how underwhelming Mike Pollock is as Eggman. Nothing he delivers is ever threatening or engaging, it's just kind of bland.
How about this? You little!
On a positive note, the storyline and the music are the exact same as the HD version and are still really great, but as a whole, the Wii version just doesn't have a whole lot going for it. I'm glad that they didn't downscale the HD version's graphics and made it its own thing, but it's so dull to look at and it becomes such a chore to play through. I almost regret buying it. I actually reached a certain point where I just gave up on finishing it. Yeah, I didn't finish UnWiished. I just couldn't. It was so dull. You can't even change the voice language from English to Japanese. Now, you could change the language to Japanese, but all this does is change the text and shit to Japanese. You still hear Jason Griffith's underwhelming Sonic voice wooing through the levels. To be fair, I wouldn't toss UnWiished in the trash like I did for Shadow World 6. I would at the very least take this game to a video store and trade it in. That's it. I wouldn't throw it away, I'd just give it away. And that's all I got. Strangely enough, the Wii version got the higher ratings. Yeah, for some odd reason, people just preferred this watered down, dull, and severely easy version of Sonic Unleashed over the more energetic, breathtaking, and slightly difficult HD version. I don't get it. How's the Wii version better? It's so lackluster and dull. Also, it's missing 2 levels. Yeah, all Missouri gets is a boss battle while Empire City is nowhere to be seen. Yeah, it's just gone! How is this supposed to be the better version of Unleashed? This is the version that people gave 6s and 7s while the HD version got 2s, 4s, and 5s? Are you kidding me? Gaming journalism is a fucking joke. The professional reviewers who favored the Wii version as opposed to the HD version are wimps. Yeah, I said it. You're a bunch of wimps. And if you honestly believed every single negative thing they said about the HD version of this game, then you're a flake. The HD version of Sonic Unleashed is the superior version, bar fucking none. I mean, yeah, Sonic's fast-paced levels in the HD version can be a bit off-putting, but it's very adjustable to get used to its gameplay. Plus, the Wolfhog isn't terrible, it's a change of pace, and if your only complaint about it is how slow they are, then I take your opinion about it seriously as I take a 6-year-old's perspective on life. Like, really? I'm the one with the short attention span? Fuck off. Sonic Unleashed is a solid game, and there's not a single brutally hard or unfair thing about this game. Well, there is that one level. The very level I've held off on for this whole review. Okay, so when I first gave up on completing Unleashed and decided to use that GameFAQs save file, I did feel really bad for skipping out on most of the game. So to punish myself, I decided to go to the last and most infamous part of this game. I went to the level that I've heard so many horror stories about. Once you reach the end of Unleashed, you finally play through Eggman's ultimate creation. It's indeed the brainchild of all of Eggman's creations. I'm of course talking about the 8th and final level, EGGMANLAND. Oh boy. This level right here is considered to be the hardest level in Sonic Unleashed, if not any Sonic game. There is no mercy from this level. It hits you with everything. Dickish spike and batnik placements, several stupid quicktime events, those set pieces where you have to boost on super fast conveyor belts while you're trying to jump over those laser barriers. Also, the frame rate is still an issue. There's also these very horrid 2D sections for regular Sonic. Oh, and for the people who love the Wolfhog, this level is actually a hybrid level. At certain spots in the level, you'll come across a Sun and Moon hourglass, and you'll have to flip it because the Wolfhog has some parts of the levels where he'll have to do some platforming. And this is where a certain problem you don't really notice about the Wolfhog in the previous levels, but it's completely prominent in EGGMANLAND. For some weird reason, in heavily lit sections of the levels, the Wolfhog's drop shadow completely disappears, which can make precise platforming really difficult to pull off. Not to mention, a lot of the time the Wolfhog is tiptoeing on these pipelines, and it's really irritating when you have to jump on the exact right spot of the pipe, otherwise you're slipping and falling to your death. Another thing about this level is that it takes forever to complete. I've seen blind playthroughs for EGGMANLAND last over an hour. Hell, my first playthrough of this level had to have been over an hour. In fact, I rechecked that guy's 100% save file, and this level lasted a solid hour for him, and he's still got a B rank. A whole hour is a B rank! My recording for this level only took about 36 minutes, but seriously, this is a huge level! Your first playthrough of EGGMANLAND is going to take forever, and with the stakes being raised, you're usually going to be thrown off by a projectile or those godforsaken QuickTime events. Gah! But there are things I do like about this level. Now, hold on a second. Before you click off of this video, at this point it's almost gone past 90 minutes, I'm amazed if you're still watching, but this level isn't completely unsalvageable. For starters, there's plenty of platforming, not just for the Wolfhog, but also for regular Sonic. There are shortcuts that you can use to skip them, but the platforming is a nice change of pace, especially since there's a lot of it here for regular Sonic. While the Wolfhog's drop shadow is just about non-existent in this level, I don't have a huge difficult time landing jumps on things. The only time I hated the Wolfhog segment was whenever there was this huge jump you had to make on a pipe. It's practically a leap of faith. Plus, there are enemies you encounter in the Wolfhog sections, but almost every time you come across them, you can actually just ignore them. Yeah, you just gotta activate whatever you need to get past whatever section you're in. I breathed a sigh of relief when I realized that. You have no clue how much time that seriously saved me. Here's a good tip. When you reach these Wolfhog sections where you're in a circular room, you don't have to fight the enemies in there. In fact, you could actually knock down these pink force fields, and you could find the lever you have to pull to progress in the level. Phew. One of the only times you have to fight the enemies is near the end when you're fighting against the giant Gaia creatures. Just be sure to use your UnWiished ability along with your shield. I recommend using cross plus triangle / A plus Y. It's a really great drill attack that can take out most of the big guy's health. Another positive part of the Wolfhog sections is that you're always hearing the level music. Yeah, the battle theme doesn't play at all, so you can listen to the entire level music without it getting cut off every 2 seconds. So grateful for that. So yeah, EGGMANLAND is unforgiving, but I can understand why it's this way. First of all, it's EGGMANLAND. It's the metropolis that Eggman has been trying to build since Adventure 1. He finally succeeded, and of course it would be this unforgiving. It's supposed to be the perfect death trap for Sonic the Hedgehog. Plus, it's the final level, so everything being more difficult than anything in the regular levels is very understandable and pretty adjustable. To be honest, I usually try to go back to EGGMANLAND to do a deathless run, because I'm pretty sure that's the only way you could get an S rank. The highest rank I have so far is an A rank at 20 minutes, but I swear, one day that S rank will be mine. And to be perfectly honest, I prefer this version of the level over the Wii version. Why? Because of the Wii version's stupid way of handling level progression. Well, the Wii version isn't a hybrid level like the HD version, whether that's a good or bad thing is completely up to you, but I still hate this level in the Wii version. Regular Sonic goes through the level in about 4 to 5 minutes, but then he has to do about 3 different missions in the same level. Not much variety. Also, the Wolfhog has his own sections of EGGMANLAND, but instead of getting the usual 3 acts, this one gets 5. 5 levels! I'm sorry, but how did the Wii version get higher ratings? I much prefer the way the HD version handles EGGMANLAND, where it's just one huge level you have to play through, and not several. Another plus, the music's great. In fact, we get 2 separate music tracks for regular Sonics and the Wolfhog sections. Not to mention, the atmosphere in this level is pretty brilliant. It's one of the best looking levels in the game, to be honest, despite the frame rate issues. I seriously don't recommend cheating your way to the end of the game like I first did. I think play through the whole game up to EGGMANLAND can really help you become more prepared for this hellhole. Much like how this level is designed to be the ultimate death trap for Sonic, it's also designed to test the player's skills up to this point. It's still ball-bustingly hard on the first go, but you'd be very surprised how much replay value can make this level much smoother to get through. And I'm just gonna throw this out there, but I'd play EGGMANLAND before any level from Sonic Generations. Yes, I'm that crazy. I guess you could say I like a good challenge. And I also love the level's originality. After making it through EGGMANLAND, we get to the final boss with Eggman as the Wolfhog, the Egg Dragoon. This isn't that much difficult than the other Eggman bosses, but it's a decent boss fight despite the QuickTime events. Just dodge Eggman's attacks and try to smash the yellow and green buttons. Also, don't fuck up the QuickTime events or you'll die. At least the music's still great. It sounds really dramatic and the scene fits it pretty perfectly. However, Eggman is not the final boss. Again. as we have one final entity to deal with, Dark Gaia. And a lot of fans really hate this boss battle in the HD version. This boss has two phases, and it's incredibly debatable which one is the worst phase. I personally dislike the first phase the most. After Chip puts together the Gaia Colossus, you have to use it to fly to Dark Gaia, who is throwing flaming boulders at you. You can either dodge the boulders or punch them, but the punch isn't instantaneous, so you'll have to time them properly. There is a shield button, but it's mainly used to protect yourself from losing too much health from Dark Gaia's laser attack, which is just about unavoidable. There's also another part of this phase. Every time Chip gives Dark Gaia a beating, Sonic gets to have his turn. However, Sonic goes through these mini sections where he has to dodge shit being sent at him, while also making it to the end of the section on a time limit. A few people, by that I mean Some Call Me Johnny in 2009, say that the time limit in these sections are invisible, but it's not. It's in the top corner of the screen. You are put under pressure when playing these sections, but it's not like the level just kills off Sonic without letting you know when. I actually do really like the idea of Sonic running through the Gaia Colossus just to smack Dark Gaia away from him and Chip. That's a fun concept. I remember after I first completed EGGMANLAND, I decided to give Dark Gaia a go, and I absolutely hated this boss. The difficulty curve is so bizarre for first time players. But I will admit, upon replaying this boss a few times, it is very easy to get used to the rock patterns for Chip, and the level layouts for Sonic. Though I will admit, the third time you have to beat up Dark Gaia is very tricky. Also, fuck the quick time events, I can't say that enough. They severely aged this game. The second phase is known as Perfect Dark Gaia, a nice callback to Perfect Chaos. Much like Perfect Chaos, you're playing as Super Sonic, but this time around, instead of having to collect rings to survive, he actually has his own health meter. Huh. Once the second phase starts, you're boosting through the air while dodging meteorites and collecting rings to build up your health. It's basically a 3D version of Doomsday Zone from Sonic 3K. Then there's the actual boss fight, and boy. You have to have Super Sonic fly around this shield and smack into 8 different dragon heads until their health goes down. Okay, there are 2 irritating parts of this boss fight. Number 1 is the controls, which takes some getting used to. I'm sure you're sick of hearing me say that, but they're incredibly odd. Super Sonic's basically in the 2D perspective and you could still use your boost, but turning and moving Sonic is a bit finicky. You have to point the analog stick in the exact direction Super Sonic is going to fly at. Whenever you hit one of the dragon heads, Super Sonic is pushed back a bit, and you have to rotate the entire analog stick to make Sonic face the dragon head again so that he can damage it more and more. It takes about 4 hits to kill them, so you'll have to keep rotating and pointing Sonic to keep hitting Dark Gaia's tentacles. The second issue with this boss fight is that Chip is still controlling the Gaia Colossus, and you have to kill off all of Dark Gaia's tentacle heads in time. Otherwise, Gaia's going to end up killing Chip. I'm pretty positive that if you damage Dark Gaia's heads, then he'll hold off on Chip, because sometimes he'll face Sonic and toss some rocks at him. Yeah, that's another thing to look out for, those freaking boulders. I also wish the frame rate wasn't so crap either. Seriously, PC port, Sega! I've heard a lot of people say that Super Sonic controls just like the characters in Knights, so if you played Knights, then you're all set. If you haven't, then good luck. To be honest, I much prefer the second phase of Dark Gaia over the first phase. It's much more straightforward, and I actually think it's easier than the first phase. Also, going back to the Wii version for a bit, I don't understand what people mean when they say Dark Gaia is much better there. I don't get that annoyed by Dark Gaia in the HD version, but the fight in the Wii version made me pull my hair out. Yes, I got to the Dark Gaia boss, but it was the exact point where I gave up on UnWiished. The Gaia Colossus isn't charging at Dark Gaia in this version, but instead you have to wait for a good time to hit him while also dodging his attacks. The controls are so fucking sensitive that it becomes really easy for Dark Gaia to get several hits on you, and I swear I game overed here 6 times. Also, good god, is Chip's English voice terrible. Sonic sections aren't split up this time, but you do play through all 3 of them in a row. I guess that's better, even though the QuickTime events aren't just limited to the HD version. Yeah, they're in the Wii version too, but then there's the Super Sonic part of the boss fight, and I just can't beat this fucker! It looks easy, you just charge at each of Dark Gaia's eyes, but you're given so little rings and Dark Gaia attacks way too fucking frequently! I hate this boss in the Wii version! How is this better? This is actually infuriating! Did the people who say they prefer this version of the boss even bother playing the Wii version for themselves? I much prefer the boss fight in the HD version. Of course, there are still QuickTime events at the end, so I gotta prepare for those, including the last one where you press the square button 60 times? What the fuck? But to be honest, I can get past that because I still think this is a decent boss fight. It's a tad bit annoying, but I still got used to the controls and I did find it very gratifying to play as Super Sonic. Especially since the whole story actually built up to it and it wasn't like the previous games where they just pulled the emeralds out of their asses. However, much like the previous games, Phase 2 of Dark Gaia is the only part of the game where you get to play as Super Sonic. He's not playable in regular levels, which is rather disappointing. I'm used to it being this way at this point. At least Super Sonic's boss fight is pretty decent. after playing and getting used to it. Supersonic is practically the sole reason why Phase 2 is my favorite part of the Dark Gaia boss fight. Another thing that helps this boss fight is the music. It's so awesome! The first phase of Dark Gaia uses a heavily orchestrated sounding piece that thankfully fits here better than Solaris' Phase 1 music. While Sonic Team did go out of their way to get an actual orchestra for this game's soundtrack, and a damn good one at that, the themes in Dark Gaia's fights weren't actually orchestrated. It's all synthesized, but despite that, they all still sound really damn good. Especially the second phase. Remember how in Sonic 06 the second phase of Solaris played an orchestrated remix of the game's vocal theme, His World? Well, in Sonic UnWiished it actually continues that idea, and the second phase of Dark Gaia is playing an orchestrated remix of Endless Possibility. And oh my god, it's exploding with so much emotion. It's got such an awesome start and feeling towards it, and I love the center part of the song where even more drum beats get added to the theme. Yeah, it's not an actual orchestra, but I honestly thought it was when I first heard it. It's so fast-paced and it just makes the second phase of Dark Gaia so encapsulating and awesome. Actually, one thing you're probably wondering is just where the hell is Jun Sano during all this? Aside from being the vocal theme coordinator, he didn't really have that much involvement with the soundtrack in terms of level themes. However, during the Supersonic vs. Perfect Dark Gaia theme, he's the one playing the electric guitar. That's pretty awesome. I know for a lot of people this boss fight sucks, but I personally think this was a good way to end the game. I mean, sure, for first-time players, the controls can be a bit obnoxious in the second phase, and the first phase can be rage-inducing, but much like playing this game legitimately to prepare yourself for EGGMANLAND, I think the same applies for Dark Gaia. It's hard, but it's the final boss, and the final boss is the entity you've heard so much about throughout the story. I still hold that Sonic UnLeashed's story is so involving and emotional that it just made reaching this point all the more worth it, and to be honest, I really felt that when I first got here playing through the whole game. The adrenaline I had while finishing off Dark Gaia was seriously real. I mean, the quick time events did kinda kill the mood, but that's probably why they had that segment where you mash the square button 60 fucking times. It's almost like the game went, "Oh, you better not calm yourself, the game's not over yet, now you mash that boost button like there's no tomorrow!" The next thing I knew, the adrenaline came back. Once I finally finished that massive amount of button mashing, the game had me boosting right through Dark Gaia as the finisher. I was so excited when Supersonic boosted right through Dark Gaia's face. Then the screen went white and it played the cutscene where Sonic goes through Dark Gaia's face. Bam! The game's over! I did it! I fucking did it! The game's finally over! I never felt this emotionally involved with a Sonic game, or hell, video game, in years! That is when I finally knew it. I finally got it. Sonic UnLeashed is not just a good Sonic game, it's a phenomenal Sonic game. It's the type of Sonic game I never realized I always wanted. It's done on such a huge scale and I just can't get enough of it. Even after you beat the game, you can still go back to the other levels via level select, and if you want, there's plenty of DLC for this game. A lot of the DLC is alright, good time wasters. There's even one that has Adabat running at a smooth 60 frames a second by removing a lot of weather elements. It's almost like the game designers heard a lot of people complaining about it. Also, whoever was in charge of the DLC seriously had a hard-on for spike strips because seriously, almost every downloadable mission has spikes everywhere. It goes a little overboard at a few points. Okay, this review has seriously gone on long enough. I'm pretty surprised that Sonic UnLeashed gave me so much to talk about. There's so much in this game that I just love that it completely diminishes the imperfections that are still present. Sonic UnLeashed is a spectacular Sonic game, and on its own, it's a relatively solid video game. Though I do think there's no way Sonic UnLeashed could ever be perfect, but it seriously wouldn't take that much to make this game a great 8 out of 10 for me. Here's what I'd fix. Number 1, the most obvious, the frame rate issues. Number 2, a much better English voice cast, meaning recast everyone while bringing back ya boy Ryan Drummond as Sonic, and, you know what, maybe let that Kate Higgins chick voice Tails. Something tells me she could have a really good voice for Tails. Just a thought. Number 3, make the Sun and Moon medal collecting less picky. And number 4, this is kinda spoilers, but I'd import Sonic's controls from Generations because I honestly prefer them there. I can still get used to UnLeashed's controls, but there's a better option available and I think UnLeashed would seriously benefit from it. Also number 5, the QuickTime events. Like, seriously, those have gotta go. Even if you have to redesign a few things, just make them gone. They're the only part of this game that doesn't hold up. But hey, I still don't mind the current version of Sonic Unleashed, though I do think slight improvements could make the game really great. The English voice acting sucks, the QuickTime events can be a pain, the metal collecting can be picky, and the frame rate can be bothersome, but Sonic Unleashed has aged remarkably well. The story is engaging, the graphics still look amazing, the soundtrack is beyond top notch, and while the gameplay is a bit uneven, it still contains an awful lot about what I look for in a Sonic game. Plus, I could switch the voices to Japanese, so the VA problem is kinda fixable. I still think Sonic Adventure is the closest we ever came to a perfect 3D Sonic game, but as an overall game and just how well it's truly held up, Sonic Unleashed is my favorite modern Sonic game. Yes, better than Colors and Generations. So, in my Essay 1 review where I say I put this game slightly above Generations, just pretend I said Unleashed, alright? I was thrilled and amazed by what Sonic Unleashed did to me, and I'm so surprised that people don't talk about how great this game was and still is. The critical reception for this game was a fucking joke, and I think a lot of fans give this game too much flack without really playing it. Though I will say, if you haven't played any Sonic game, especially a 3D one, I don't recommend Sonic Unleashed being your first Sonic game. The difficulty curve can be a bit too much for some people, so I would recommend playing Sonic Colors or Sonic Generations to ease yourself into modern Sonic's gameplay style. Just don't keep your guard down whenever you do get to this game. Sonic Unleashed at the time wasn't the best received Sonic game. Hell, there were some people who despised this game more than Sonic 06, which is fucking laughable. To me, Sonic Unleashed used to be that one Sonic game I wasn't a huge fan of, but I still had huge respect for it. I mean, this was the game that came right after Sonic 06. There was no way this game was going to be treated or reviewed fairly, as frustrating as that may sound. But for the few fans who stuck with this series and the few critics who gave this game a decent score that wasn't for the Wii version, they all saw Sonic Unleashed in a pretty similar way. This game gave people hope. Hope that Sonic could truly recover. Sonic could rise back to stardom and have good games again. The time between 2005 and 2009 were dark years for the series. It was even dubbed the Dark Age for most people. From my perspective, the only really awful Sonic games I reviewed during that time were Shadow the Hedgehog and Sonic 06. Yeah, that's it. 2 games. 2 really stupid, horribly written, and misdirected games. Sonic Unleashed, for me, is not part of the Dark Age. Well, anymore for that matter. If anything, it signified the end of the Dark Age for this franchise. Sonic was back to normal. He was at his best again. He re-earned his respect. And some X-fans loved Unleashed so much that they came back to the franchise. If this game was able to do that for several people even after coming off a franchise killer like Sonic 06, it seriously achieved something great in my eyes. Sonic Unleashed is a game I've had huge respect for in the past, and now I have huge appreciation for it. I'm glad I gave this game the second chance it deserved, because it seriously would have been a disservice to me if I wrote this game off as a mixed bag like most reviewers made it out to be. But now, I love this game in terms of story, music, art style, and including the gameplay. It was a rocky start, but it thankfully paid off in the end, and I'm so proud of that. Slight improvements can make this game really great in my eyes, but for now, I'm perfectly fine with giving Sonic Unleashed a strong 7.5 out of 10. Phenomenal Sonic game, and also a solid video game. I highly recommend it. Also, I'm giving the Wii version a 5.5 out of 10. It's not terrible, it's alright, but I seriously don't recommend playing it.
Fun fact, when I wrote the Sonic 06 review, that was just before I gave Sonic Unleashed a second chance. And I'm glad I did so because, well, I just wasted almost 2 hours of your life explaining why. However, that also almost completely changed my perspective on the next 2 games in the series. Mind you, I knew what I was going to say ahead of time before I got to Unleashed, but after finishing the game completely, my perspective on its successors is radically different. So, that'll be interesting. So come back next time on Cooper's Perspective, if you want to by this point, when I look at one of the most well-acclaimed Sonic games of all time. That's actually really underwhelming for me right now. The 2010 Nintendo exclusive Sonic game, Sonic Colors. If you thought my opinions on Sonic Unleashed were pretty terrible, you're not going to be too crazy about what I have to say about this game. Also, fuck me, I don't know if this will be the last super long review I ever do. But I will make sure the Sonic Colors review is not its own feature film. But you never know. Not even I know. So I'll see you guys next time, and thanks for watching this crap. No refunds.
Huh?
忘れないよ、ずっと。この大地と共に君のそばにいるから。ソニック！